Welcome back, deep divers. Let me ask you something. What if the most powerful way to lead isn't, through overt force or just strict authority, but something way more subtle, something profoundly transformative? Imagine genuinely turning your fiercest opponents, the people actively working against you, into your strongest, most loyal allies. Sounds almost impossible, right? Maybe like something out of a storybook or, I don't know, a historical fluke. But history and our deep dive today really suggests otherwise. It points to a path where compassion, not coercion, becomes the ultimate leverage. Okay, so let's unpack this. For this deep dive, we've got this incredible set of sources titled Prophetic Leadership, Influence Through Mercy and Emotional Intelligence. And these aren't just like dusty historical texts. They are packed with insights that feel incredibly relevant for today. For everything from boardroom negotiations to, well, those heated comment sections we all see online.
Yeah, what's truly fascinating here is how these sources just fundamentally challenge our usual ideas about power and influence. We often think power means dominance, right? The ability to command, to enforce. But our mission today really is to explore how a specific historical figure, Prophet Muhammad, peace be upon him, used mercy, what we now call emotional intelligence, EQ, to achieve these extraordinary leadership outcomes that really redefine what victory even looks like. We're going to pull out specific, really vivid examples to understand not just that he turned enemies into allies, but how he actually did it. It reveals the vital, very practical role of emotional intelligence. And crucially, we want to connect these timeless principles back to you. How can you apply these lessons? Whether you're leading a team, navigating tricky online discussions, or maybe just trying to build stronger relationships in your own life. And it does raise a really important question. Can this kind of ancient wisdom truly offer humanity's ultimate advantage, especially as we dive deeper into an AI-driven future?
Absolutely. Get ready for some honestly surprising facts, some incredible stories, and a really deep exploration of principles that seem to just transcend time, culture, and even, technological revolutions. This isn't just about looking back at history. It feels much more like unlocking a different kind of power, a power that, frankly, feels more relevant now than maybe ever before. So the sources, they highlight this consistent theme, almost revolutionary, really. Prophet Muhammad, peace be upon him, repeatedly chose forgiveness, even when facing just overwhelming provocation, betrayal, and let's be clear, having the undeniable ability to retaliate decisively. And this isn't presented as just being nice or, passively avoiding conflict. It's framed as a deliberate, strategic act of leadership. It's a conscious choice made again and again to take a path that maybe at first glance seems totally counterintuitive for someone in power. You'd expect a leader, especially one who's faced immense hardship, persecution, even violence against them and their followers to, well, flex their authority, maybe even seek retribution when they finally gain the upper hand. But these sources show us a profoundly different approach, one that sort of reshapes the whole nature of conflict itself.
Exactly. And we connect this to the bigger picture, this consistent choice. It reveals a really profound understanding of human nature and, crucially, of long-term influence. It's about building something sustainable, right? Something that lasts beyond just one battle or a temporary win. When you choose forgiveness, particularly when you're clearly in a position of strength, you're not just letting go of past wrongs. You're actively disarming future hostility. You're essentially inviting reconciliation instead of just perpetuating a cycle of resentment and revenge. It's a strategic long game. Recognizing that bitterness, that desire for payback, it can linger, it can fester for generations, and basically sabotage any hope of future cooperation or real peace. So by choosing mercy, a leader doesn't just, say, avoid immediate bloodshed. They fundamentally create a pathway for a renewed relationship. They ensure a foundation built on trust and shared humanity, not fear or subjugation. It totally changes the psychological landscape.
And one of the most striking examples, really a paradigm shift in power dynamics, is the conquest of Makkah. Let's try and really put ourselves there for a second. Imagine you're returning to the city where you and your followers were born, but where you faced years of relentless persecution, mockery, boycotts, violent attacks. Your lives were threatened. You were forced to flee as refugees, leaving everything behind. For over a decade, the people of Makkah actively waged war against you. Now, after all that struggle, you stand at the gates of this very city with a strong army behind you. You've decisively overcome your adversaries. What would most leaders do? I mean, history is filled with examples of victors taking harsh tolls, right? Executions, enslavement, plunder, destruction. The people inside Makkah, knowing their own history of oppression, they must have been bracing for the absolute worst. Their leaders were probably hiding, fearing immediate execution.
Instead, and this is just remarkable, the Prophet, peace be upon him, entered Makkah, not with the sword drawn for vengeance, not with a big triumphant display of military might, but, well, in humility, in peace. He declared to the very people who had oppressed him, exiled him, fought him for so long, these words that just echo through history. Go, you are free. This was an act of unprecedented, almost breathtaking mercy. It wasn't just a tactic to avoid more fighting. It was a profound moral statement. It disarmed his enemies not through military force, but through a kind of moral authority that left absolutely no room for continued hatred or resentment. And this wasn't weakness, not at all. Quite the opposite. It was an overwhelming display of strength, of confidence in his vision, and an unwavering commitment to his principles. It showed his purpose wasn't to dominate or humiliate, but to unite and uplift, even those who had been his fiercest enemies. It completely shattered the normal script of conquest, replacing retribution with this radical act of grace.
Right. And the analysis of the impact, it's incredibly clear. This single act, it immediately fundamentally shifted the whole relationship. It went from victor and vanquished to, well, potential reconciliation, even profound admiration. It wasn't just about avoiding bloodshed, though that was huge. It was about laying a psychological and emotional foundation for completely new, much more harmonious relationship. The people of Makkah, who had every reason to expect punishment, maybe even slaughter, they were met with magnanimity, freedom, this completely unexpected mercy. It created this vacuum where fear and hatred used to be, right? And it allowed other more positive emotions like respect, gratitude, maybe even curiosity to start taking root. It shattered their expectations. It opened the door for them to reconsider everything they thought they knew about this leader and his message. And many who had fiercely opposed him did convert, not out of force, but out of conviction, born directly from witnessing this extraordinary act. Okay, here's where it gets really interesting. How does this kind of radical mercy, combined with this unwavering character, actually transform a hardened opponent into an ardent follower? The sources point to the incredible case of Khalid ibn al-Walid, may God be pleased with him. Now, this man wasn't just any opponent. He was a formidable military strategist, a brilliant warrior known across Arabia. He initially fought against the Prophet, peace be upon him, and the early Muslim community. In fact, he had inflicted significant defeats, like at the Battle of Uhud. He really showcased his strategic genius. He was a powerful adversary, a man of action, strong convictions. You wouldn't think someone like that, so deeply entrenched in opposition, would ever switch sides, let alone become a devoted ally. He was definitely a force to be reckoned with, one of the Prophet's toughest opponents for sure.
Yeah, absolutely. Yet through the prophets, peace be upon him, consistent character, his unwavering justice in all his dealings, even with those who opposed him, and ultimately, through these profound acts of mercy, Khalid ibn al-Walid was eventually drawn to Islam. And this wasn't like a sudden battlefield conversion under duress. It seems to have been a gradual transformation, born from witnessing a leadership that consistently embodied integrity, compassion, and a genuine concern for humanity, even when facing immense provocation. Khalid observed a leader who didn't compromise on core principles, yet always offered a path to reconciliation. He saw the strength, the resilience, the sheer moral force of the Prophet's character. He saw how justly he treated even captured enemies, how he upheld agreements. It all added up. So Khalid not only embraced Islam, but became one of the greatest generals, forever known as the Sword of Allah, serving the Muslim community with unparalleled loyalty and strategic brilliance. This isn't just a conversion story. It's a profound transformation of allegiance. It really demonstrates mercy's immense power to inspire loyalty and dedication, even from those who were once bitter, formidable adversaries. It shows that integrity, coupled with compassion, can penetrate even the most hardened hearts and minds. It wasn't about winning a battle against Khalid. It was about winning Khalid himself, his talents, his loyalty, his heart.
Wow, that story. It leads us straight to this powerful reflection from our sources. True power is the ability to forgive when you have the strength to punish. Just pause on that for a second. It's relatively easy to forgive when you're powerless, maybe, or when the offense is minor, when you don't really have anything to lose by letting it go. But when you hold all the cards, when you have the actual capacity to inflict pain, serious consequences, maybe even ruin someone, that's when the choice for forgiveness becomes a true measure of strength, not weakness. It requires immense self-control, foresight, and a really deep inner conviction. Now, connecting this directly to you, think about a time you had that power, the power to retaliate or punish, maybe at work when a colleague really wronged you, or within your family during a super tense argument, or even in a social situation where you had the means to make someone pay to embarrass them or seriously inconvenience them. But instead you chose forgiveness, or at least you chose to let it go, to consciously de-escalate. How did that decision change the dynamic of that relationship? Did it maybe ease the tension? Did it create an unexpected bridge to understanding, perhaps? Or did it possibly make you feel a different, deeper kind of strength? A moral courage, maybe, that felt far more satisfying and impactful in the long run than any retribution could have possibly been. These aren't just, historical anecdotes from long ago. They feel like practical, immediate lessons for navigating complex human interactions, personally and professionally, right here, right now.
Yeah, and our sources really emphasize emotional intelligence, EQ, as just a cornerstone of this prophetic leadership model. It's defined basically as the capacity to recognize, understand, and then effectively manage emotions, both your own internal emotional world and the often complex emotions swirling around you and other people. It's way more than just intellectual horsepower, a high IQ, which tends to focus on logic and reason. EQ dives into the realm of feelings, motivations, those subtle social cues that truly drive human behavior. It's about having a deep awareness of the emotional currents flowing within and around us, and then having the skill to navigate them effectively and empathetically. It's the capacity not just to know about emotions conceptually, but to feel them, understand where they're coming from, and then respond in a way that fosters connection, not alienation.
Absolutely. It's about navigating that messy, sometimes unpredictable world of human feelings with, well, grace and effectiveness. Think about it. Facts and figures, data, algorithms,
Hmm.
they can only get you so far, right? They can inform decisions, sure, but they rarely inspire true loyalty or deep connection. But that ability to connect with someone on an emotional level, to genuinely try and understand their perspective, maybe validate their feelings, and respond in a way that truly resonates with them, that feels like the secret sauce, doesn't it? It's what transforms a simple transaction into a lasting relationship, a rigid command into genuine inspiration, and maybe even a potential conflict into an opportunity for growth and mutual understanding. It's that human element that, frankly, no machine can truly replicate. Let's dive into some specific incidents that really powerfully demonstrate this profound EQ in action. Picture this scene. It's incredibly vivid in the sluices. A Bedouin, a man from the desert, approaches the prophet, peace be upon him. Now, Bedouins were often known for being very direct, maybe unpolished in their manners, sometimes seen as rough compared to city dwellers. This man isn't gentle or respectful. He grabs the prophet's peace be upon him and quotes so harshly, so violently, that it leaves these angry red marks on his neck visible to everyone around. And then without any politeness, he just rudely demands wealth, saying something like, "Oh, Muhammad, give me some of the wealth of Allah that you have." Hmm. Okay, what would be the natural, almost automatic reaction for someone in authority? Especially when physically accosted and disrespectfully addressed in public like that. Anger, indignation, a sharp rebuke at the very least, just to assert authority and maintain some dignity. Most leaders would feel challenged, slighted, their personal space violated.
Right. But what's truly fascinating here is the prophet's peace be upon him response. Instead of reacting with anger, instead of asserting his authority through force or even just a sharp word, he simply smiled, a gentle, understanding smile. He then not only granted the man's demand, but actually gave him more than he had so rudely asked for. Now, this wasn't just about generosity, though it was generous. It was an act of profound emotional control, deep empathy, and incredible foresight. He didn't just see an insult to his position. He saw a person maybe with an underlying need or desperation. Perhaps someone unfamiliar with social customs or driven by real hardship, or maybe just displaying the unrefined manner of his background. His calm demeanor and that magnanimity, it completely diffused potential conflict. It turned a moment of blatant aggression into one of unexpected kindness and respect. He looked beyond the surface behavior to the potential human story underneath, choosing to soothe, understand, and uplift, rather than to inflame, punish, or dismiss. And the Bedouin, probably expecting anger or refusal, was utterly disarmed. It must have left a lasting impression.
It's incredible. And here's another amazing story that illustrates the same principle just perfectly. Imagine this. A man, clearly unfamiliar with the customs and the sanctity of the place, actually started urinating inside the masjid, the mosque, a sacred space for worship. You can just picture the immediate reaction. The companions of the Prophet, peace be upon him, were naturally outraged. I mean, this was a profound act of disrespect to a holy site. They rushed forward, intending to stop him immediately, maybe physically intervene, certainly punish him for such an awful offense. Their immediate gut reaction was to protect the sanctity of their place of worship, stop the defilement.
Yes, understandable, but again, the prophet, peace be upon him, intervened calmly. He stopped his companions from their impulsive reaction. Instead of letting them confront the man or humiliate him, he said clearly and gently, "Leave him, clean the place, and teach him gently." This showed just extraordinary understanding. He saw the man's ignorance, not deliberate disrespect, The man simply didn't know better. He wasn't trying to defile the mosque. So the Prophet, peace be upon him, prioritized education over immediate punishment. He understood that harshness would only alienate the man, maybe cause more trouble, maybe even make him run off and spread the impurity further. This approach prevented further embarrassment or harm to the individual, made sure the sacred space was cleaned respectfully, and, crucially, taught the entire community a powerful lesson. A lesson in patience, compassion, and the wisdom of gentle guidance over swift retribution. It was really a masterclass in de-escalation and restorative justice, not just punitive. These incidents powerfully underscore that insight from our sources. Anger can close hearts. Calm empathy can open them. And that applies universally, doesn't it? Ancient deserts, modern boardrooms, anywhere.
So, okay, what does all this mean for you, for us? How can we apply these moments of profound emotional intelligence, these sort of practical blueprints for effective human interaction in our own daily lives? Because these aren't just fascinating stories from way back when. They feel like incredibly relevant strategies for right now.
Absolutely. Think about boardrooms, team meetings, tense client negotiations, even those often toxic online comment sections, places where emotions can run incredibly high and misunderstandings are just rampant. Leaders with high EQ, they inspire trust and loyalty precisely because they make people feel understood and respected, rather than judged, dismissed, or alienated. They have that rare ability to navigate conflict, not by just imposing their will or reacting defensively, but by skillfully finding common ground, by building consensus through active listening and validating others' feelings, and by fostering a more productive environment, simply by managing emotions, their own and others, skillfully. They don't just react impulsively to provocation. Instead, they choose a thoughtful, empathetic response that aims for resolution, not just winning or escalating conflict. And consider this. How might a moment of patience and gentle teaching, maybe directly inspired by these examples, transform a difficult conversation at work? Instead of immediately shutting down a challenging team member or dismissing a critical comment out of hand, what if you paused, listened really intently to understand their underlying concerns? The emotion may be hidden beneath the words, and then offered guidance or a solution with genuine empathy and respect. Or imagine an online debate. Instead of attacking an opposing viewpoint with sarcasm or ridicule, what if you chose to engage with genuine curiosity, with respect for the other person's perspective, even while disagreeing strongly? These seemingly simple shifts, all driven by emotional intelligence, they have this profound power to de-escalate heated situations, to build bridges where maybe walls were starting to go up, and even turn potential adversaries into thoughtful conversation partners. It's really about recognizing and affirming the humanity behind the disagreement, opening up a space for dialogue that pure logic often just fails to create.
Yeah, it's so true. We often, almost instinctively, focus on winning the argument right, proving ourselves right, showing our intellectual superiority. Whether it's a formal debate, a family discussion, a political back and forth, or even just a casual chat, the default mode can easily become conquering the opposing viewpoint, making sure
Yeah.
our perspective comes out on top. But the sources suggest this deeper, far more impactful strategy for true influence, winning hearts, not just arguments. And
Okay.
that's different. It's not about rhetorical skill alone. It's about something far more fundamental to human connection, something that creates real, lasting change.
It really does raise that important question. How exactly do you win a heart? Especially the heart of a harsh, maybe deeply entrenched opponent. It's clearly not about just being smarter or having better arguments. You might win the debate decisively, logically, but in doing so, you could very well lose the person entirely, alienating them even further. Winning hearts requires a fundamentally different approach, one that values the individual's inherent dignity and humanity above the sort of fleeting satisfaction of being right or proving a point. It's about demonstrating a consistent, unwavering character that speaks much louder than any words or arguments ever could, and showing a profound compassion that can disarm even the staunchest, most hardened resistance. It's like planting seeds of respect that can eventually, maybe surprisingly, blossom into trust.
And our sources point to another remarkable story here. Umar ibn al-Khattab, may God be pleased with him, he was another initially harsh, even violently opposed figure against the Prophet, peace be upon him, and early Islam. Before his conversion, Umar was known for his formidable personality, his really strong convictions, and his fierce, almost legendary opposition to this nascent Muslim community. He was a man of immense physical strength, a respected leader in Makkah, known for his temper, his resolve, definitely not someone easily swayed or intimidated. His presence alone was commanding, and his eventual conversion was seen as this monumental turning point, a huge psychological boost for the early Muslims. So the question is, how did someone so vehemently opposed, someone who actually persecuted Muslims, come to to embrace the very message he once tried to suppress.
Yeah, it's an incredible story. Yet, Umar was won over, not through force, not coercion, not even through brilliant, overwhelming arguments. He was transformed by witnessing the Prophet's peace be upon him, unwavering justice, his impeccable character, and the sheer moral force of his leadership. Umar saw a leader who embodied fairness and truth in all his dealings with friends, with foes, with the rich, with the poor. He saw the integrity, the compassion, the genuine concern that the Prophet, peace be upon him, showed for everyone he encountered, even those who wished him harm. It was the consistency of these actions, the integrity that just permeated every aspect of his life, and this compassionate approach to all people that gradually wore down Umar's deep-seated opposition. He was apparently particularly moved by the steadfastness of the Muslims, including his own sister who had converted, and by the sheer beauty and power of the Quranic message when he finally heard it. This gradual realization of profound truth and undeniable character ultimately transformed Umar. He became one of Islam's most loyal and dedicated followers, a towering figure in its history, and eventually a caliph renowned for his own unwavering justice and wise leadership. It was really a victory of virtue and genuine human connection over ingrained enmity and rigid ideology.
That core principle here, it's so beautifully put in the sources and feels incredibly relevant for our world right now. You don't defeat people by humiliating them, you transform them by dignifying them. That is such a stark, almost radical contrast to so much of our current public discourse, especially online, wouldn't you say?
Oh, absolutely. It's a critical and often completely overlooked distinction. Humiliation breeds deep-seated resentment. It fuels anger, and it only entrenches opposition more fiercely. When you try to defeat someone by shaming them, by ridiculing their beliefs, or by publicly diminishing their worth, you might win a momentary rhetorical point, maybe get some applause from your own side, but you almost inevitably create a bitter, maybe lifelong opponent. Dignification, though, creates an entirely different possibility. It creates an opening for connection, for understanding, and crucially, for the possibility of change. It acknowledges the inherent worth of the individual, even if you vehemently disagree with their actions or beliefs. It's about separating the person from the problem, right? Addressing the issue or the disagreement without attacking the individual's fundamental humanity or their right to hold a different view. This approach respects their agency, it preserves their self-respect, and it actually allows them to consider a different path or a new perspective without feeling like they're losing face. It's like offering an olive branch instead of throwing down a gauntlet.
And in today's world, which feels so polarized sometimes, where public discourse often just spirals down into shaming, ridicule, this competitive race to humiliate the other side, the sources offer this powerful, almost disruptive counter-narrative. Compassion is a disruptive force for unity. Just imagine for a second what our interactions online, offline, everywhere might look like if we consciously approach them with the intent to dignify rather than to defeat, to understand rather than to shame. Imagine the fundamental shift in tone, in outcome, if our primary goal became preserving the other person's dignity, even as we strongly disagreed with their stance or challenged their ideas seriously. Think about your own experiences, maybe online or offline. When have you actually seen someone genuinely change their mind, or at least soften their stance? Not because they were intellectually cornered or out-argued, but because they felt truly respected and heard, even while being challenged. Maybe it was a difficult family discussion that somehow reached an unexpected resolution, or a disagreement with a colleague that surprisingly turned into a collaborative solution. Maybe even a rare, nuanced conversation on social media that actually avoided the usual vitriol. Often, it's that feeling of being seen, heard, and respected, that fundamental dignity that opens the door to genuine dialogue, to real understanding, and potentially to profound transformation. It achieves something far more effectively than just the triumph of one viewpoint over another ever could.
Yeah, and our sources really emphasize that the Prophet, peace be upon him, built that early Muslim community not just by establishing laws and regulations. I mean, those are certainly important. They provide structure, order. But fundamentally, he built it by forging these deep, almost unbreakable bonds of care, compassion, and mutual support. Laws give you the framework, the rules of engagement, sure, but genuine care and compassion, that's the emotional glue that holds community together. It's what makes it resilient, vibrant, capable of overcoming huge adversity. It's a crucial difference between just a system or a collection of individuals and a living, breathing, deeply interconnected community.
Exactly. It's about creating a profound sense of belonging, isn't it? A shared human connection that goes way beyond just transactional relationships or simply following the rules. It's about cultivating an environment where individuals feel genuinely valued, unconditionally supported, and intrinsically connected to one another. It fosters this collective identity rooted in empathy, in altruism, in a shared purpose. It feels like it moves beyond mere obligation into the realm of heartfelt commitment. And a really powerful historical example cited in the sources is this brothering of Muhajirun and Ansar, which translates basically to the migrants and the helpers. This was a remarkable event. When those early Muslims, the Muhajirun, were forced to migrate from their homes in Makkah to the city of Medina, they literally left everything behind. Their homes, their wealth, their jobs, their social standing, all sacrificed for their beliefs and just for basic safety from persecution. They arrived in this new city, vulnerable, pretty much destitute, and completely dependent on the generosity of strangers. Their situation was incredibly dire, both materially and emotionally.
Right. And the local inhabitants of Medina, known as the Ansar, the helpers, they didn't just offer temporary shelter or basic charity, which frankly would have been generous enough in itself. Their response was extraordinary, unprecedented really, an act of selfless mercy and solidarity that truly astonished observers at the time, and still does. They literally shared their homes, their wealth, their land, their resources with the Muhajirun, often on an equal basis. They made them full partners in their lives and livelihoods. Can you imagine opening your home, your business, your entire life to a complete stranger who has lost everything? Not just as a temporary guest, but essentially as an adopted family member. Some even offered to formally divide their properties, truly embodying this spirit of brotherhood. This went so far beyond what was legally required or even culturally expected. It was an act of profound voluntary compassion, creating these family-like bonds between total strangers based purely on shared faith and basic humanity. It was an unprecedented social experiment in communal support, selflessness, and the sheer power of empathy in action. And the causal chain here, it's incredibly clear and powerful. It offers a foundational principle for any community or organization, really. This act of profound mercy immediately created immense, unshakable trust between these two groups. The Muhajirun, stripped of everything, found themselves embraced with open arms, with unconditional support, with dignity intact. That trust, in turn, created an incredibly strong, deeply interconnected, and unified community. A community capable of overcoming immense challenges, from economic hardship to external military threats, and all the complexities of building a brand new society. So it's this fundamental sequence. Mercy creates trust, and trust forges unity. Each step is critical, and one really robustly enables the next. Without that initial mercy, trust is fragile, easily broken. And without genuine trust, lasting unity is pretty much impossible, no matter how many rules or regulations you put in place. It's the emotional foundation that truly endures.
Okay, so bring this forward again. What does this all mean for us today? In our fast-paced, often fragmented modern world, how do these ancient principles of care, trust, unity, how do they apply to our workplaces, our organizations, our diverse communities now?
Well, this principle is highly relevant in modern organizations, whether they're businesses, nonprofits, schools, even online communities. The sources state that social trust is the currency of sustainable organizations. And that feels spot on. Without trust, everything just slows down dramatically, becomes inefficient, prone to conflict, even collapse. Collaboration becomes incredibly difficult, right? Individuals start guarding their ideas, hoarding resources, maybe viewing colleagues with suspicion. Innovation stalls because people are hesitant to take risks, share half-formed ideas, or admit failures for fear of reprisal. Employee loyalty just wanes, leading to high turnover, disengagement. When people don't trust their leaders or their colleagues or the organization's stated mission, productivity suffers and the whole culture can become strained, even toxic. Conversely, an environment that's rich in social trust, it fosters psychological safety. That allows for open communication, shared learning, honest feedback, and a real collective drive towards common goals. It makes an organization agile, resilient, and frankly, a much better place to work. And think about today's context. Remote work is increasingly common. Teams are often spread across different geographies and cultures. Diverse teams bring a multitude of perspectives. How can leaders intentionally foster these bonds of care and trust in that environment to build a more unified, sustainable organizational culture? It's clearly not enough to just put trust on a values poster. It needs to be actively cultivated through consistent, visible acts of care, transparency, and empathy. So what are the subtle yet powerful ways we build or erode trust daily? It's about honoring commitments, even the small ones. It's about being transparent about challenges, not just hyping successes. It's about showing genuine empathy when individuals are struggling. It's about celebrating collective wins and acknowledging everyone's contributions fairly. Every interaction, every decision, every policy, it contributes to the social trust account, either making a deposit or, unfortunately, sometimes a painful withdrawal. Leaders have to be conscious architects of trust, recognizing it as probably their most valuable and maybe most fragile asset.
And the sources bring these profound historical lessons right into our current context, making them incredibly tangible, really actionable for leaders today. In today's dynamic workplaces, leaders who consistently practice empathy, they aren't just seen as nicer or more personable. They actually measurably outperform those who rely solely on hierarchical authority, top-down directives or just rigid control.
Yeah.
This isn't just a cultural preference or some kind of feel-good aspiration. The evidence suggests it's a real strategic advantage.
Exactly. It suggests that empathy consistently leads to better employee engagement, higher productivity, stronger team cohesion, and ultimately greater innovation. Why? Well, because when people feel genuinely understood, valued, and cared for by their leaders, they experience what psychologists call psychological safety. This allows them to bring their whole selves to work, right? To express ideas without fearing ridicule, to admit mistakes without fearing punishment, and to take calculated risks knowing their leader has their back, even if things don't pan out perfectly. This creates this powerful positive feedback loop of trust, loyalty, and intrinsic motivation that directly fuels a more dynamic, creative, and successful organization. It moves beyond just command and control to inspire genuine collaboration, dedication, and a shared sense of purpose. It fosters an environment where talent actually wants to stay and grow.
Okay, but what about the often harsh, sometimes anonymous, impersonal landscape of digital leadership and online interactions? This is where so many of us spend a huge chunk of our time, facing this constant flood of information and opinions, often presented in a really confrontational, even aggressive way. How do these principles of mercy and EQ translate there?
That's a great question. And here, the concept of mercy translates into actively avoiding cancel culture and consciously choosing dialogue over attack. So instead of immediately shutting down opposing viewpoints or engaging in public shaming or jumping to conclusions based on maybe incomplete information, it means extending grace. It means genuinely seeking to understand the other person's perspective, even if you fundamentally disagree with it, and fostering constructive conversation rather than just trying to destroy the person or their reputation. This approach radically reduces polarization, which is just rampant online, doesn't it? And it opens pathways for genuine communication, for understanding, maybe even reconciliation, even across really deep ideological divides. It's about remembering there's a human on the other side of that screen, granting them the benefit of the doubt, or at least the chance to explain themselves before rushing to judgment or condemnation. And the long-term impact of choosing dialogue over attack in these digital spaces, it could be truly profound. It could transform online communities from these toxic battlegrounds of anonymous anger into forums for genuine, respectful exchange. Instead of just fostering more echo chambers where only like-minded people talk to each other, reinforcing existing biases, it could encourage a more inclusive, more resilient online environment, one where diverse perspectives can be shared, discussed, maybe even debated vigorously, but respectfully. Now, this doesn't mean we condone harmful speech or hate speech, obviously, but it means approaching disagreement with an intent to understand, maybe to educate, and definitely to build bridges, rather than simply to condemn, erase, or inflict reputational damage. That kind of approach could start to mend some of these fractured digital relationships, foster intellectual humility and growth, and maybe build more understanding in unified online publics, creating a much healthier digital commons for everyone.
Okay, here's where it gets really interesting, especially in our rapidly evolving, technologically saturated world, where artificial intelligence is becoming increasingly sophisticated, integrated into almost every aspect of our lives, from customer service bots to complex data analysis and decision-making.
Yeah, and the sources offer this incredibly powerful AI-era insight. Machines can calculate, but they cannot show mercy. Just think about that for a moment. AI can process unimaginable amounts of data. It can optimize algorithms. It can even mimic human conversation with stunning accuracy sometimes. AI can analyze, predict, execute tasks with superhuman speed and efficiency. It can even generate art, music, code, but it fundamentally lacks the capacity for genuine empathy, for compassion, for forgiveness, or for that nuanced moral judgment that underpins true mercy. These are intrinsically human qualities, aren't they? Rooted in consciousness, subjective emotional experience, a deep understanding of human suffering, human hope. Machines can simulate these things, perhaps increasingly well, but they cannot truly feel or care. And this leads us to a really crucial conclusion, possibly the most important takeaway. Mercy and EQ are humanity's ultimate, irreplaceable advantage in an AI-driven future. As technology continues to take over more analytical tasks, repetitive tasks, even complex cognitive tasks, these uniquely human capacities for emotional intelligence, for compassionate leadership, they become not just valuable, but utterly indispensable, essential. essential for innovation, which often requires deep human insight and collaboration, essential for social cohesion, which depends entirely on trust and empathy, essential for sustained human flourishing. AI can optimize for efficiency, for profit, for prediction, but it cannot inspire loyalty, heal divisions, create a true sense of belonging, or provide genuine meaning and purpose. Those are the profound, irreplaceable roles reserved for human leaders who embody mercy and emotional intelligence. They are the skills that simply cannot be automated away.
So how does this fundamental insight maybe shift our understanding of what makes a truly effective leader in the coming decades, especially as AI becomes even more pervasive? What skills should you be consciously cultivating, actively developing, to not just survive, but really thrive in this future? It profoundly suggests that while technical skills will always matter, of course, these human-centric skills, empathy, compassion, the ability to forge trust through mercy, the capacity to inspire through character, they're going to become absolutely paramount. These are the qualities that will truly differentiate human leaders in a world increasingly managed or at least influenced by algorithms. They are perhaps the very essence of what makes us human and therefore our ultimate leverage. Hashtag tech outro. So, to quickly recap our deep dive today, we've seen that mercy isn't a sign of weakness, not at all. It's a powerful, truly transformative leadership strategy, one that can disarm hatred, build profound moral authority, and ultimately create lasting peace, cooperation, and genuine allegiance.
Yeah. And we also explored how emotional intelligence isn't just a nice-to-have soft skill or some secondary trait. It's actually as critical, maybe even more critical, than any technical skill. It's that profound ability to calmly and empathetically navigate human emotions that opens hearts, diffuses conflict, and inspires deep trust and loyalty. It fosters environments where people can genuinely thrive.
And remember, the ultimate goal, as these sources so powerfully illustrate, isn't just to win arguments, right? Or prove a point or dominate a situation through force. The deeper, more enduring objective is to win hearts, because it's winning hearts that creates that sustainable, lasting influence. It actively prevents division and fosters genuine, resilient unity within any group, any community, maybe even an entire society.
Ultimately, this combination of mercy and emotional intelligence, it offers a leadership model that truly seems to transcend time, culture, and yes, even the looming AI era. It represents a uniquely human and seemingly indispensable advantage. It reminds us that our greatest strengths, our most powerful tools for influence and lasting impact, often lie right there in our most profound, most compassionate human qualities.
So what does this all truly mean for you as you move forward from this deep dive? We've talked about some incredible historical examples and some really powerful, direct, modern applications.
Well, think about this. The sources encourage us to actively recall a specific moment when we forgave someone, even though we had significant power over them, and to reflect on how that choice fundamentally changed the relationship, maybe in unexpected, deeply positive ways. They also suggest maybe committing to just one small act of unexpected kindness each day, whether online or offline, as a deliberate practice to cultivate these very qualities within ourselves.
But here's the ultimate challenge, maybe something really provocative to mull over as you step back into your daily life. What if you were to intentionally build a mercy plan for your own leadership, whether that's within your family, your community, your workplace, or across your digital interactions? How would you consciously choose to respond when provoked? How would you commit to choosing dignification over defeat, empathy over anger, and ultimately consistently building trust through genuine care?
What kind of world, or maybe even just what kind of single conversation, what kind of relationship could you personally create by consistently and deliberately applying these transformative principles? The impact might be far, far greater than you could ever imagine.
Keep diving deep, keep questioning, keep exploring.